How's it going, guys? It's your boy Kanji FPL and welcome back to the channel. Last game week 11, man, I was so nervous going into that week because in this phase from game week 8 to game week 15 where I'm going without Erling Haaland, this was the one week where I was like, I know I'm going to be behind the couch. There's no way I'm going to watch that Man City game. And honestly, I was just trying to act like football wasn't going on that day. I was like completely disconnected. But when my bro texted me and someone was like, bro, Haaland got injured, was subbed at halftime, I thought he was just joking because like we both don't have Haaland. But when I found out that Haaland was injured, bro, I was literally ready to pop the champagne. I thought this was gonna be my week. This was the moment I'm gonna win FPL, baby. Because like think about my team, like it's such a great team, especially whenever my biggest effective ownership against me is Erling Haaland. So I'm like, this is it. I'm gonna climb. And to add to that, I found out that Simicast was benched. I was like, wow, this is great because I have Trent Alexander-Arnold as my main differential. Like, this is my week. I can feast on it. Trent against the worst team in the league, Luton. Mo Salah captaincy against the worst team in the league. And I've got Diogo Jota, who's my differential, also starting. Like, I'm going to kill it this week, right? Wrong. Just when you think your team is looking great, the FPL gods come out there and they smack it right in the face, and everyone ended up blanking. It wasn't just Haaland. So it's one of those moments where I got humbled. I thought for 1 second I was going to go out there and win FPL. But I guess it just wasn't meant to be. And that's okay. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm not going to go out there and try to captain a differential or try to gain more rank. But I'm just going to do my own thing. Stay steady. Like I'm going to be like a tortoise. I'm going to go slow and steady. I'm going to win the race at the end of the day. So I can't wait for the next couple weeks. I know those people that have Haaland, I don't know if they're going to captain him. But to me, I don't even think he's close to being a captaincy option for the next couple weeks. So now that game week 11 is out of the way, I'm ready and I'm excited. So let's jump right into my game week analysis. Haaland was captained by 6.5 million people, and he had an effective ownership of around 150% in my rank. Like, that is bone-chillingly scary. Like, he honestly could have gone out there and smashed it and ruined my season, but he didn't. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind is that, just because someone has a good fixture doesn't mean that they're going to kill it. Like FPL is so weird sometimes. It's funny how things work. He goes against Manchester United, absolutely smashes them. And that's like his lowest effective ownership that he'd had over the last 4 to 5 weeks. So of course, after that haul, everyone was, having the fear of what Haaland could do. And when he goes, and then obviously, he has his highest effective ownership after the last 4 or 5 weeks. And he blanks. Like, that's just how things go in FPL. Like, it's just so funny how this game works. And I think I kind of just feel so bad for those people that sold Haaland and they took like a -8 or a -12 to bring him in last week. Like, those are the people where I feel bad for you. And I think that's the thing you got to remember is that in order to do well in FPL, you have to make decisions and have very strong convictions and like not be swayed to change your plan. And I think, of course, you can change your mind if like your hypothesis or certain factors have changed. Like, of course, you have the right to change your mind. But I think in general, like you want to just make the decision and then just trust the process. Like, it sounds crazy, like to be going against Haaland in probably one of his easiest fixtures, especially at home. But it worked out this time. I'm not saying it's always going to work out this way, but I'm just really glad that he didn't smash it. But it's weird because City scored 6 goals. So if City scores 6 goals, you're expecting Haaland to get something. But it was just one of those lucky days for me. So I'm happy that he blanked, but it didn't really matter. Salah blanked, Watkins blanked, everybody blanked. But you know what? I ended up with 39 points, and I'm really happy with that. I actually compare myself to the legendary manager safety score on Live FPL. And you're probably asking yourself, like, what is the legendary manager safety score? I think it's just a bunch of solid FPL players that have been playing FPL for the last 5 or 6 seasons that have very solid finishes and they've been very consistent. And I think what Ragaboli, the owner of Live FPL, what he does is he just compiles it into a safety score and takes the average. And that's sort of the benchmark that I'm comparing myself to week in and week out. So if I'm getting 39 points and those people are getting 30 points this week, that's a massive green arrow. Like, these are people that are completely clued into FPL. There's nothing that they're missing. They have access to all information. They've been doing well for a reason. They're not just like random people that have been finishing in the top 10K the last like 2 years. They've been doing it for the past 4 or 5. So I'm really happy that I had a wonderful week. And again, it all just came back to my superhero. Some superheroes, they don't wear capes. I just want to say thank you so much to Tariq Mitchell. Like, he killed it. The funny thing with Mitchell is that He was actually injured going into the game week. Like, he was one of the main reasons I was ranting. I was so mad last week, not just because of, the negative variance from Watkins' score, but because I thought that my differential Tariq Mitchell was getting injured just when I actually brought him in my wildcard. Like, I specifically brought him in for game week 11 and for game week 13 against Luton. So I'm really glad that he returned. 15 points though, I didn't really deserve that. In fact, I'm really thinking about just taking a hit just to give points back to the field. Like, I would rather, take a smaller green arrow and be around like 75K or maybe even 85K if I take the hit. I'd rather be there and have a better squad. So I'm genuinely contemplating taking a hit this week, but I really think that's unnecessary. I think the hits will come when I need them. And I think for now, my squad looks very great. But yeah, I'm just really happy to have those Tyreek Mitchell points. Moving on to the rest of my defense, we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who was coming up against Luton. He had an XGI as a defender of 0.71. There was a really, really big chance that he created for Darwin early on in the match. He chips it in behind. You know those Trent balls where he just lofts it in behind the defenders and putting it into like the corridor of uncertainty where the goalkeeper can't come out. Like, Darwin runs onto it because he loves to run in behind. And it goes to Darwin. He takes it. He takes the ball. Like, he's dribbling with it. He controls it. He shoots it off the crossbar and out of play. Typical Darwin. Like, I don't think many people really cared about that unless they had Darwin in FPL, but for me as a Trent owner and him being my differential, I was fuming. And I think most Liverpool fans are just so annoyed at Darwin this game. I think as if his XG must have been around at least 1.5 to 2.0. There were so many big chances that fell to him. They obviously weren't all created by Trent, but this was the week I thought I had it. Against Luton at home to blank, that's disappointing. Like, he's not really outscoring Simicast by much. I really expected more from him. He's one of my favorite players in the league, and he's been disappointing, but I'm going to trust him. I'm going to hold the faith. I'm going to wait till game week 15, and then likely just transfer him out like I plan to do so all along. The defender that I am losing trust in is Matty Cash. I don't know if I trust Aston Villa defensively from a macro perspective, like as a team, and I think the only reason I have Matty Cash in my squad is his attacking threat. He has very strong XGI, like especially XG. Because I think from an Aston Villa perspective, their left wing back is the one that creates, and their right wing back is the one that actually finishes. So with Matty Cash, it's like, they haven't really been getting that many clean sheets. In fact, he was lucky 2 weeks ago to have been subbed off before they conceded, so he locked in that clean sheet. But it's one of those things where I don't know if Matty Cash is going to be a good long-term hold. But for now, I think a 5.0 with some good fixtures on the horizon, Fulham at home and Bournemouth away, why would I even look to sell him? So I'm happy to have him in my squad. And my goalkeeper of Areola is just whatever, bro. He's 4.0, blanking again, and it is what it is, and you get what you pay for, Moving on to my midfield, I think I've got the two players that I think are essential in FPL, Bukayo Saka and Heung-min Son. Both of them blanked in games that were great, but it is what it is. I think this week really just came down to my Liverpool differentials. Trent, Salt Lake Captaincy, and Jota. And for all of them to blank, that was a heartbreaker. But Matoma is the only one that got the return, He picked up I think it was like a cross that went off the defender, like it was an own goal. I was lucky to get those points, to be honest with you. And Alvarez is kind of covering Haaland for half the price, and Watkins is just so annoying right now because he's been so talismanic. The entire season he's been returning week in and week out, and now it's like he's blanked twice in a row, and I captained it from one of them. So frustrated for Watkins. I've genuinely contemplated taking my transfer and moving him on to Callum Wilson because I know how talismanic Callum Wilson can be, even in tough fixtures. The thing to think about from a Newcastle striker perspective is that whenever one of the strikers is out and the other striker is going to play 60 or 70 minutes guaranteed, that is like FPL gold. Newcastle attack is very, very strong, but even Callum Wilson now, I think he had a hamstring pull in the Champions League. I have no idea with this guy if he's going to play. He's just so injury prone, rotation risk, so many issues. So I guess for now, especially going into the Christmas holiday fixture congestion, I think it's important to just have somebody like Watkins who is going to just start week in and week out, and you don't have to worry about that spot. So I think that's just too much of a luxury move to sell Ollie Watkins, and he's probably a season-long hold, especially at his price point. And if we don't have any other strikers that, put their hand up to say, hey, I'm a pick, I think Watkins would be the guy that I'd hold on to unless somebody like Tony comes back from Brentford. That's something that, could stir the pot. But for now, Watkins, I think, is the most essential striker. But no one's really essential in FPL given, the player price is. But for me, I think he's the one. I think if you don't have him, you should try to look to bring him in. Usually in life, when you pay more for something, you just expect it to be of higher quality. But sometimes you find that that doesn't actually tend to be the case. And I think there are certain budget defenders that I think are better value picks over the long term relative to their premium counterparts in the same team. So I just want to go team by team and give you my thoughts of who I think are the best defenders to even have in your FPL squad and who I rank as the best picks in terms of just being long-term picks. So when I look at it from Liverpool, I think Trent is overpriced. If I had to redo my Game Week 8 wildcard, I would likely have Virgil van Dijk in it instead of Trent. It's not just because Virgil has been picking up the bonus, it's just because Trent is just not as creative or as talismanic as he was in previous seasons. And I think Virgil is the one you go for in order to get access to the Liverpool clean sheets, or you'd go for somebody like Alisson, who's the best goalkeeper in the world. In fact, even though Liverpool conceded, Alisson still picked up 6 points this week. Like, I couldn't believe it. It's not because the guy got subbed off early and he locked in the clean sheet. He's just a bonus points monster. He picks up saves. He picks up the bonus points. Like, Alisson's the best goalie in the world. I'm so annoyed I didn't go for him on my wild card. I genuinely thought about it. Like, genuinely thought about it. But to me, I was like, if I'm going to go for a Liverpool player, I'm going to go for Trent. But I think if I had to change my decision, I probably would have gone for Virgil van Dijk and genuinely considered Alisson a little bit more. I just think spending too much money on your keeper is not worth it long term. So I think that's why I decided to just go away from that idea. But it's just nice to see Alisson picking up the points. It just gives me that, that confirmation bias. Like, hey, if you're feeling spicy another time, maybe you can go for Alisson if you want to. But I think Tsimikas is just an avoid. You never know what's going to happen. Like, he can play in the Europa League and he might be benched in the Premier League. Like, it's hard to time it, especially if you don't have that many options to bench him. I think you should just avoid. If he's like one player in a 5-man rotation, then sure, go ahead. But if you're relying on him to start week in and week out, I would just avoid. Moving on to Newcastle, I think Trippier is the best defender in the game, let alone the best defender in his team, including value. I think, yes, you can get players like Livramento, Lascelles, and Lewis Hall who are, 4.5 or below, and they can cover what Trippier is doing. But I think Trippier is just so good. In fact, if you don't own him, and even if you own one of these budget Newcastle defenders, you're really hoping for Newcastle not to get a clean sheet because Trippier's effective ownership is so high, and he's honestly so high in the bonus tier rankings that he's going to pick up a lot of points. So I just think Trippier is the one. And I think if I had to go for any defender above 4.5, he's the one I would go for. And I think from a macro perspective, long term, I think I just want to have Trippier and a bunch of 4.5s or maybe one 5.0 and just rotate through those price points. I think Trippier is definitely the long-term essential defender pick. And I would build my team around Trippier and Haaland long term. I think having an Arsenal defender is a luxury. And I think Ben White is the luxurious luxury to have. And I think he is the type of player that has a goal or an assist in him relative to the players like Saliba and Gabriel. But the problem is that, Gabriel has more attacking threat than Saliba, but Saliba is more nailed. And I think Zinchenko has the most attacking threat. In fact, I think he is really, really interesting because he's the defender that's likely to play in the easiest games. And I think if I had to pick between Gabriel and Zinchenko, and if I definitely had to save the money, I would probably go with Zinchenko because I think for sure he's going to be playing in those games where Arsenal have to go and break down a defense. I think Saliba and Ben White are the only players that you can trust week in and week out. And if I had to go for somebody for the long term, I'd probably go for Saliba if I was just looking at it from a value perspective. But if you have the money, go for Ben White. But he's a luxury player. You definitely don't need to be spending that extra money if you think you can use it better elsewhere. Moving on to Man City, I think there's only two real options. It's Ruben Diaz and Kyle Walker. I don't think the XGI difference between players like Walker and Akanji and Gavardio is very high, but I think the expected minutes is drastic. You never know when anybody's going to start. They even have Ake who can play in any of those positions. So for me, I just think you would avoid Man City defenders as a whole, but if you do want one, I'd probably just lean towards Kyle Walker because I think he has an assist or two in him from the way that they're playing. And I think if I had to go for another one, I'd probably go for Ruben Diaz because I think he's the best defender in the game. Not even just in the game or in the league. I think in the entire world, I think Ruben Diaz, he's him. He's one of the biggest pillars of Man City's defense. I think he's one of the reasons that they've been so consistent over the last 4 or 5 seasons. Moving on to Chelsea, we've got options like Chilwell, Reece James, and Levi Colwill. Chilwell's out injured, so he's not an option right now, but I think Reece James and Levi Colwill are just very strong avoids. I don't know who's going to be playing in that left back spot for Chelsea. And I think on the right back spot, Reece James has, he has some spice. He definitely has a goal or assist in him. Whenever I watch him, I'm like, he's so threatening, but it's the minutes. You just can't trust this guy. And transfers are so valuable that I would just avoid. And in fact, I'd probably go for Sanchez because when I think of the teams like Liverpool, Newcastle, Arsenal, Spurs, all their keepers are 5.0 and above. And Sanchez is playing for a very solid defense, and he's only 4.5. So I think Sanchez is the one that I would go for, and I would avoid all Chelsea defenders. Moving on to Spurs, I definitely go for Pedro Porro. I think he's worth the extra 0.5. But the thing is, Romero now, he's injured, and Van de Ven, you know what? Van de Ven is something I really want to talk about. Like, Spurs have been playing really, really well. And I think Romero's always been a very solid pick from an FPL perspective, but I would never go there because he always has a red card in him, and I don't really rate the guy. Like, I'm just not a big fan of him, even though he's Argentinian and a lot of people have like heaped a lot of praise on him and they're playing well. I would never go for Romero. He's just not my type of FPL pick. He's just scary to own because you never know what he's going to do. He's like a wild card. But the thing is, if I had to go for a center back, I'd go for Van de Ven, but he just picked up that hamstring injury. And this is the thing, is like he is so fast. Like whenever I watch the games, I'm like, wow, this guy's different. But that's the thing. So I don't know how long this injury is going to be. And I think if he's out for, let's say, 2 or 3 months, you can kiss Spurs' title charge goodbye. Like, there's no chance. They don't have anybody that can replace him. And I think if you play a high line, your center backs are the most important position. Obviously, you want to have creativity. You want to have finishers on the wings or up top that are going to finish the chances that you create. That's very important as well. But I think having a center back that has ball progression, that can play the ball, but can also run in behind and stop counterattacks and one-on-ones, or even buy you time for the rest of the team to come back and to protect your keeper, I think when you're putting Eric Dyer in that position where he has to run back, it's completely different than Van de Ven. And I think somebody like Pedro Porro, you're just going to have a lot less clean sheets and you're going to be very, very reliant on Spurs getting attacking assists from their wing back. And I think he has a lot of attacking threat. In fact, he's on some of the set pieces. And so I'd say Porro is the one that I'd go for. But if Van de Ven does come back soon in the next month or two, then I think I'd probably go for him if I wanted to save the money. But I do think this is the type of scenario where I think Pedro Porro is worth the extra money. So it's worth going for Pedro Porro, whereas it's not worth going for Ben White over somebody like Saliba or Zinchenko, in my opinion. And lastly, I think Cash is the one. Of course, you can go for Pau Torres if you want to, but I think the attacking threat for Cash is insane. He has the best XGI involvement of all defenders in the game, so he's definitely worth paying the premium for. There are certain thoughts that I just put onto my Twitter account just whenever I'm watching a game, or this is during the Champions League, like certain thoughts that come to my mind. If you don't have Twitter, please go sign up for Twitter. Like, signing up to Twitter was one of the main reasons that I've done so well in FPL over the last couple seasons, and I just try to tweet my thoughts out there. So if you're interested and you like watching my videos, just drop me a follow on Twitter as well. I'd like to just share my thoughts out there, and at times I don't even get to go over so many thoughts that I have. Like, I'm not able to go over so much in a YouTube video, and I just put so many of my thoughts on Twitter that you're able to just scroll through and read what I'm thinking whenever you want. So I think that's something I would do, is just try to get onto Twitter. Not just for me. There's so many great people on Twitter that have access to early team leaks and to have access to information that you're not privy to on YouTube. So I think getting on Twitter is one of the biggest reasons I've done well in FPL. So yeah, just want to recommend that. If you haven't done it already, please do so. Guys, this is just a friendly reminder. If I have provided some value to you over the course of this video, just smash that like button, click that subscribe. My goal is to get to 100 subscribers, so help a brother out. So one of the things that I have noticed is that in the Champions League, Julian Alvarez is actually getting his rests. And I think that just shows you how important he is to Pep's first 11. And I think that's the thing you got to remember, is that the only player that they can really trust in the midfield is going to be Phil Foden. Everyone else is pretty suspect to me. Kovacic, Nunez, I don't know if Pep is ever going to play these guys. He's never going to be playing Calvin Phillips, that's for sure. You can trust Rodri, you can trust Foden, Alvarez, and Haaland. There's nobody else that I would go to. I think Foden and Alvarez are the only ones Pep can trust that can actually score a goal. Of course, now Doku's come into the play, but he's a winger. And of course, Bernardo Silva has come into the play, and he's potentially like a CDM and CM and right winger. He's like a utility player for Man City. So of course, Bernardo's there, but realistically, Alvarez is the only one you can really trust to score a goal whenever you need it. And Doku could potentially become that guy. I'm just a skeptic. This is the theme that I'll always have. When I have a new player that comes into the league, I'm very lukewarm on them. I'm not really excited to go jump onto this spicy differential early. They have to prove to me that they're a good player over a larger sample size before I'm willing to bring them into my team. So for me, I'm just going to avoid all City mids. I'm just going to stick with either Foden, Alvarez, Walker, Diaz, and Haaland. I'm not going to touch Ederson, that's for sure. That guy doesn't make any saves. One of my biggest conundrums this week is actually what to do with Diego Jota. Instinctively, I wanted to bring Jota in because I thought Diaz was going to be out for 3 or 4 weeks because of the family situation that he's going through. And because I saw Luis Diaz come back and he wasn't training, I was nervous. I wasn't sure if Jota was going to start because I know Luis Diaz is definitely Klopp's first choice on the left. But now that he's back, he comes back, he scores the goal that ties the game up at 1-1. I know for sure Jota's probably going to start in Europa League, and I know Diaz is probably just going to start the Premier League. Like, this is going to be the regular rotation that's happened over the course of the season, and I think that's just going to be intact again. So the question is, what do I do with Jota? That's the thing, is like, I don't even want Diego Jota in my team. Like, the only reason I brought him in is because I thought Luis Diaz was going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks. I wish I had waited till the last second before I made my transfer, because if I found out that Luis Diaz was back in training before the deadline, I probably would have just kept him and started him. Because even if he was benched, he always has a chance to score a goal off the bench. And I'd say the same thing with any Liverpool attacker, because that's just how great Liverpool attack is. So it's just annoying to see that Diaz is back. I'm really glad that he scored the goal, and I know it meant a lot. So I'm really glad. But that was very bittersweet because I could have had his points and I just sold him to Jota. So that really hurt. But anyway, moving forward, that's the sunk cost now. The question is, what do I do? So I have two options. I either go to Eze first, who has good fixtures in the short term, and then move him on to Mbeumo, or do I just go straight to Mbeumo, even though he has Liverpool and Arsenal? And that's like one of the biggest decisions. And I think Mbeumo is definitely somebody I'm going to. Like, when we compare Mbeumo to the other mids, he has the most XG. More than Bowen, more than Mo Salah, more than Heung-min Son. Mbeumo is essential. He won't be essential over the next 2 weeks, but after that, you bet your house you should bring him in. He's probably more essential than players like Son and Saka, in my opinion, especially when you consider how cheap he is. So I think Mbeumo is definitely somebody I want. Now, the question is, how much do I value that free transfer? And I think right now it sounds mad because Eze just has much better fixtures. He came back from injury. In 20 minutes, he got an assist. And I know Eze is on the pens for Crystal Palace as well. And the fixtures are so great. Luton, Bournemouth. Like, there's definitely some fixtures they can score a lot of goals in. But Crystal Palace as a whole are just very suspect offensively. I trust them defensively, though. But offensively, I don't know. So I think, just speaking to you, I've kind of already made my mind up and just gone for Mbeumo. And I think Twitter actually says the same thing. 22 people voted and 70% was on Mbeumo. And for once, I actually agree with Twitter. And I think one thing to think about when I was watching the Champions League games is that I found that Arsenal play very differently whenever Jesus is up top or Trossard is up top compared to when Nketiah is up there. When Nketiah is up there, he's just so talismanic. He likes to stay in the box. He doesn't really link up or have any exchange of positions with the wingers. And what I find is that the Arsenal wingers become so isolated when Nketiah plays up top, and he gets all the big chances. So they all fall to Nketiah, and Nketiah has to be the man. But when you play Trossard up there, Martinelli and Saka, they get more involved, especially when Jesus is up there. They just start purring because Jesus is just a better version of Trossard. The thing with Arteta is, I don't know if he trusts Trossard. Like, I do. I really trust Trossard because I've been a fan of him since Brighton. Like, I absolutely love the way that he plays. He's just so clinical whenever he gets the chances. I think last season Trossard had like 9 assists for Arsenal in the second half of the season. So I don't know why Arteta doesn't trust him. They had a great year last year, so I don't know. For some reason, he does trust Nketiah a lot, but I find that Arsenal just more fun to watch when Trossard is up there. So I just think that's something to keep in mind, and I think going into this week when they're playing against Burnley, if we find out that Nketiah is also out because, he had an ankle knock and he's out for a week or two, and Jesus is already out for a week or two, then maybe Trossard could be a really fun, like 2 or 3 week punt. Like, Arsenal's fixtures are great. They have Burnley, they have Luton, they have Wolves, they have Brentford. That could be a really spicy differential, but not for me. For me, it's like, I think Trossard is more of a pick to have an FPL draft than he is to have an actual FPL. The only reason this is relevant is because Saka is my number 1 captaincy option this week. I was debating between Saka at home and Son versus Wolves away. And now hearing that Maddison wasn't in training and the fact that he picked up an injury, it's like, I'm leaning heavily towards Saka. But the thing is, he doesn't even have a shot in the box since game week 7. So that sounds crazy. But he went out there in Champions League, got a goal and an assist, and I think his effective ownership just probably went up like 20%. I think this week he was around 65%, so I'm expecting it to be around 90% going into this week. And I think he's the best captaincy option because he's on penalties, he's at home, and he's playing against a newly promoted team. I know overall, you can always just trust Mo Salah. Like, he's at home playing against Brentford. So I think now that I know that Maddison's out, I think the second best captaincy option is going to be Mo Salah. And those are the 2 options that I'm really debating between, but my heart has really just told me to go with Bukayo Saka. I think this is Starboy Saka's week to show me why he's the man. these are just certain thoughts that I have, but there are a lot of thoughts that I think people are thinking about. So these are just some things that I've been seeing on Twitter, conversations that I've been having with people in my DMs on Twitter, and just topics I wanted to discuss very, very quickly about what I would do in specific situations. Do I think Saka is essential? Yes. I think if you don't have him and you have somebody like Madison, I would definitely move to him. I think I would take a hit to bring him in. I think over the long term, Saka is the best pick. You do have to wait to find out if he is starting. In fact, that's something to think about even from a captaincy perspective for me. But I think the thing with Arteta is you just know Saka is going to play week in and week out. They already have so many injuries. Like, why would they even think about benching Saka? Like, yes, Burnley is the type of fixture where you don't need him, but I thought this exact same way in Game Week 7 where I sold Saka and he had Bournemouth away. And Saka went out there, he scored a goal, and he could have had another 2 goals. That could have absolutely smashed my rank when I sold him in Game Week 7 for a hit. So I'm definitely not going to do that again. Like, I'm definitely going to at least own him, and I think everyone that's following my channel and you're following my content, I think you should do the same. Obviously, wait till the last minute to see if we can get an injury update, but Arteta's not really forthgiving in press conferences, so I don't think we're going to learn anything, and I think you should just bring Saka in. Moving on to the other Arsenal assets, Odegaard and Gabriel, what would you do with them? I think with Gabriel, I'd probably just hold for now and hope that he starts this game now that the Newcastle game is out the way. I know he started that Newcastle game, he started in the Champions League, and I'm hoping that he starts Burnley. If I had him, I would just start him and hope that it works out. But if he doesn't start this Burnley game, he's definitely a sell. And I think with Odegaard, he got benched in the Champions League, and I think if I were you and I had Odegaard, I would sell him. And to me, I don't think it's even worth having 2 Arsenal attackers in your team. Maybe if you want to go for that striker position, of course you can, because there just aren't that many striker options. But I just think Arsenal attacking statistics aren't as good as a whole. I think all you need is Saka, and you don't have to worry about Arsenal, to be honest. Their effective ownership from the other players is going to be very low, and I think other players are better differentials than them. Moving on to the differentials that I do trust, Bowen and Matoma, if I had to pick between them, I think it really changes depending on my mood or depending on the day, but I'd still just go to Matoma, especially this week against Sheffield United at home. I really do trust Brighton attack more than I trust West Ham, and I think that's the deciding factor. Not only that, but there's also the price as well. The thing to keep in mind is that no one is essential in FPL. Not even Mo Salah, not even Haaland. I've seen non-Mo Salah teams be in the top 100K. I've seen no Haaland teams be in the top 100K. So I think you just have to play FPL your way and just continue to make decisions that work for your team and just take it one week at a time and don't worry too much about what other people are doing. The one thing to keep in mind whenever I'm making any decisions from this game week onwards is what am I going to do with my chip strategy? From a macro perspective, there's 2 weeks where I feel like there are times to triple captain, and it's going to be in game week 20 when Man City are supposed to have a double game week, or in game week 24, 25, or 26 when Liverpool are going to have a double game week. Because I think there's 2 main FPL picks this year. It's Mo Salah and Erling Haaland. And I think if you reflect back to my game week 8 video, I explained about how I think FPL is broken up into certain phases. There's the phase where we have no Haaland, then there's the phase where we have no Salah, and I think towards game week 24 onwards, I want to make sure I have both Salah and Haaland. And I think trying to make a bench boost when I have both Salah and Haaland in my squad would be very, very difficult. So I think what I want to do is I really want to bench boost before that Liverpool double game week. So it sounds kind of crazy, but I think when most people are looking to triple captain Erling Haaland, I think I'm going to be looking to bench boost in that week. This is just how I think. I want to have Salah plus Haaland in game week 24, and because that's something I'm not going to change in my mind, given the fact that Liverpool's fixtures are so strong, and I think Haaland is going to be essential anyway, I think it's important to just bench boost early. I think it's so easy to use the triple captain. I think it'll be easy to figure out when to use the free hit. It'll just sort of fall into your hands, but I think that bench boost is so important. I feel like it's the most overrated chip in FPL. I find that I spend 2 or 3 weeks worth of transfers. I probably take a -4s in there as well just to get my bench boost off. So if I find any week where I can just like get rid of it and just get maybe 15 points, I'd be really, really happy with that. In fact, my score over the last 3 years is 15 points, 18 points, and 21 points. So I average around 18 points for my bench boost, but I can tell you, I've taken a -4 every single time. So I genuinely gained 14 points for my bench boost week in and week out. And I think when I look at my bench this week, I got 9 points from Archer, 9 points from Trippier, and I don't know whatever else I got. But that would have pretty much outscored every bench boost that I've made. So I think if even in a week where there aren't double game weeks, I can genuinely consider using my bench boost. And that's something that I really want to keep in the back of my mind. Because I don't want this to be impacting when I use my triple captain. Because I do think that Haaland is the best player in the game. And I think if there there's anyone to triple captain, it's going to be Holland, especially in a double game week. But if I don't find a single game week where I do like my bench, that's when it's going to lead me towards bench boosting in game week 20 and then triple captaining Mo Salah in his double game week later on down the season. So that's kind of where my mind is from a macro perspective. I just wanted to tell you in advance, this is where it is. Obviously, when we get new information, when the double game weeks get confirmed, that's going to crystallize my thoughts. But just as an early video, I think this is just where my thoughts are. And I think once we get crystallized news, I will make my final decision and I'll post a video on that. And I think the last player to talk about is going to be Kieran Trippier. I think Trippier, he's essential. And I think he's honestly worth taking a hit for, even this week, because I'm expecting Trippier to pick up another 9-pointer. He's playing Bournemouth. I know it's not at home, but I just think Bournemouth are so poor, and I think Trippier has just so many routes to points, whether it's a clean sheet with bonus or even an attacking return with bonus. I'm expecting something from Kieran Trippier. And I think most defenders in FPL, they don't really return. I know the fixtures are great for a lot of players this week, but I just think Trippier will probably outscore almost everyone. So regardless of who you have, if you have money in the bank or you're looking to make a defender transfer, just keep Trippier in the back of your mind, even in the tough fixtures. And by the way, I don't think Chelsea or Man United is a tough fixture, especially at home. And now we have got my captaincy matrix. Again, I mentioned this earlier. It was between Saka and Son, but now that the Maddison injury has cropped up, Son is no longer in the picture for me. So it's just Saka at home versus Salah at home. Currently, I'm leaning towards Saka at home. And it's funny because a lot of people are going to be leaning towards Saka, especially because he got the goal and the assist in the Champions League this week. But maybe the injury will keep his effective ownership low. And hopefully people will just captain Mo Salah because it's the safer pick. But I think Saka is the spicy pick and probably the better pick if he starts. And it's funny to be thinking that my main captaincy option is somebody that I think has the potential to even be benched or not even be in the squad this week. Like, it's just crazy to think about. But I think Saka is the right pick this week. And I think going forward, I have updated it. So for game week 16, very obvious, I'm having Holland as my captaincy option against Luton away. And I have Holland as my captaincy again against Crystal Palace at home. Even though I think Crystal Palace are a very strong defense, I just really trust Man City. Like, it's just one of those things where Holland at home, you can always captain him. You don't have to worry about it. So again, I'm definitely going to be taking a hit in game week 15, going into game week 16, where I need to bring Holland back in my squad. But I'm just hoping that I can get enough points, especially from game week 14 and 15, to climb the ranks, because that's when my spicy differential, Trent Alexander-Arnold, that's where I'm hoping he gets the points, you know? So anyway, so that's kind of what my captaincy matrix looks like over the next couple of weeks. And I'm pretty settled on Saka. So let me just run you through my team player by player. Again, I do have Areola versus Turner. That's the rotation. Turner was dropped last week, and I'm genuinely considering taking a hit to bring in Robert Sanchez from Chelsea, because I think that's just the best 4.5 keeper to have over the long term, regardless of double game weeks. I'm genuinely considering that, but for now, I think I'm just going to hold off on that and just take the hit later on, because I know for sure I'm going to be taking one in game week 16. So obviously Turner is not going to be playing, so Areola in a home fixture against Nottingham Forest, he's probably not going to keep a clean sheet. We're just hoping he picks up 3 saves, right? So that's what we look like from a keeper perspective. From the defenders, I do have a lot of options this week. I have Trippier, who has Bournemouth at home, White, who has Burnley at home, Trent, who has Brentford at home, and Matty Cash, who has Fulham at home. And I think for me, Trippier and White are locks to definitely start in my team. It really just comes down to Trent versus Cash. And I think because of the fact I have made my free transfer, and yeah, by the way, I did make my free transfer. It was Diego Jota into Bryan Mbeumo, because I just think I really value having that extra free transfer. I think it's just super valuable. I think every time I've played FPL, I've always wished to myself, like, I wish I just had an extra free transfer. And I think spending my extra transfer on Eze, like, that just doesn't really make sense to me. I think in the back of my mind, at least if it was like a Liverpool player or somebody like a Man City player with like high upside, a high ceiling, then sure. But Eze, no, I'm good. I think I'll just move to Mbeumo and just play him. And because I'm playing Mbeumo, that's kind of why my mind is leaning me towards actually starting Trent. Because I think what's going to happen is Brentford are going to sit deep and they're going to counterattack Liverpool. I'm probably expecting them to honestly score a goal, but now that McAllister isn't starting, I think it's probably a good thing, because what will happen is Wataru Endo will come into the team as the CDM, and he's much more of a classic CDM than somebody like McAllister. And I think Brentford will have a harder time counterattacking against Endo than they would against McAllister. So maybe Liverpool can keep a clean sheet, hopefully. And I think, if anything, Trent has so much attacking upside. If Brentford decide to sit deep like they have for the last couple times they've come to Anfield, this is going to be the type of fixture where Liverpool need Trent to unlock the door. And how crazy would it be to bench the best defender in FPL history? So there's no way I can bench Trent. If he's in my squad, he's starting. That's just how the cookie crumbles for Matty Cash. And you know what? Aston Villa haven't been that great defensively anyway, so he's first on my bench in case any of the other players don't end up making it to the pitch. Right now, I do have my captaincy on Bukayo Saka, who I think is the best captaincy option on paper. Then we've got Son, who has Wolves away. I mean, he's a talisman for Spurs up top, playing 90 minutes every game. You can't go wrong with him. And then we've got the king himself, Mo Salah, one of the most consistent players week in and week out. And of course, another week where Liverpool have a wonderful fixture, and I'm not captaining Mo Salah. Like, week in and week out, I always regret it. And you think I would learn my lesson by now, but I haven't. I'm just continuing to trust the fixture, and Mo Salah's time will come. Trust me. And now we've got my differential, Brian Mbeumo, who's going to be coming against Trent, and I'm just hoping that they can cancel each other out and maybe just pick up an 8-pointer. And again, Mbeumo is very, very solid. He has the best XG, very strong attacking statistics for Brentford and for Mbeumo individually, so I trust him. And Mitoma has a wonderful fixture. Sheffield United at home, man, I'm salivating with that one, boys. And my strikers, we've got Julian Alvarez, who I think is the most underpriced striker. I felt this way since game week 2 all the way until now. Even though Alvarez is starting to blank and in all those other weeks he was returning, I'm going to just keep my faith and keep my trust in Alvarez. I think the fact that Pep benched him in the Champions League, it just gives me that confirmation bias, like Pep knows what I'm thinking. Like, we're on the same page. We both know Alvarez is an XG overperformer, and he's way too good. And I honestly can't believe it. I was looking at the league table, and Man City are still in first place, even without KDB. Like, it's unreal. Like, I honestly would have thought Liverpool or Arsenal would be up there. Maybe Arsenal will be over the next 4 to 5 weeks because their fixtures are so good, especially with Man City's being so poor. So maybe Arsenal will overtake them. But really, man, like, you just got to trust Julian Alvarez. Like, Pep is benching him in the Champions League, starting him in the Premier League, so that tells me all I need to know. And lastly, Ollie Watkins. This is the type of fixture you could go out there and captain Watkins, but I think I'm just so scarred from what happened last week, captaining Watkins in that week where I went as a differential, and I was like, man, I don't think I'm ever going to do it again for the rest of the season. I'm just going to trust Watkins. The fact he's not on pens, he's never going to be the #1 captaincy option regardless of what the fixtures are. So, yeah. I really like what my team looks like as a whole this week. Again, I'm putting my faith in the Liverpool lads. Boys, Trent, Salah, do something for me, man. You never walk alone, boys. And Starboy Saka. This better not turn into Starboy Saka. I got my memes ready, though. I got them ready. So, come on, Saka. You got to prove to them why you're the Starboy and give me some captaincy points, my guy. That is my Game Week 12 preview. It's honestly been a wonderful season so far. I can't believe that I started recording myself in the season where I've had one of my best ever FPL seasons, but I've always been telling myself, like, I've been making good decisions every single year. And just this year, I've just been getting so lucky to get, a massive return from Mitchell and a massive return from Trippier when I brought them in. And Trippier has just been so consistent. And some people thought that he was just the type of player you could cover with Schär or Botman. Those guys are tripping, man. So anyways, if I'm providing some value to you over the course of this video, please just drop a like, a comment, and a subscribe. Like, my goal is to get to 100 subscribers. And like, honestly, I'm only 15 subscribers away. So if I'm providing some value to you, please just help a brother out. And hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Peace.